up YouTube? My name's Quickie, welcome back to the channel. I'm just trying to have an organised. I've got stuff everywhere again. So I've had to change my tune. I can't believe it. You might have noticed that the intro is now different. That's because I'm a criminal. I've got a copyright strike. Which is really bloody annoying. Basically, all the videos that I've done, or I've got like 100 and something videos now, but the vast majority of them have all got the same intro tune, and it was like royalty free and copyright and all that other stuff. So I thought, cool, I'm having that. And there was a thing there saying that you could use it, just put this bit in your description, which I've done on every single video, not a problem. And then I found out I had this thing come through, you've got a copyright strike. So I went looking, and apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently during September 2021, they did away with the, is it annotations page, or I don't know what it is, attributes page or something like that. So if you was to upload something to YouTube, by default, it goes under a common license, which basically means anybody else on the internet can download it, monkey with it, change it, use it, do whatever. You don't care, you've signed up to that. But they did away with this in September. So the fella who did it, who did the tunes, going, oh yeah, I've got a payday coming here. So he changed it. So you now got to be licensed and everything else. And by default, they just take anything that you get from the video that's got his tune in it, and he gets it. So that's most of my videos now buggered, which I'm not best pleased with. But at the end of the day, this started out as a scrapbook anyway, so, you know, all right, I'm starting from scratch again. After 2 years, I'm starting from scratch again. But, you know, we just changed the tune to something else. I have found there's an audio library. Didn't know that was there, didn't even go looking for it, so I wouldn't. But there's loads of tunes in there, and I'll just use something out of that, that'll be fine. So all the music's going to be changing. You can go in and sort it out. Most of it is music to jump off something high to, if I'm honest. It's junk. But there are some filters there, so I put in rock and angry and a few other bits and pieces like that, and you can find some decent tunes. So it's all changing again. Right, what am I doing? I'm welding up the frame. So it's this sort of boss that's, you know, obviously threaded. It's 50mm long. The thread goes down 30mm, but that's going to go in like that. Come on, go in like that. One there. One there. We'll obviously even all this stuff out. So I've got equal gap either side. And they're just going to get welded round, then all dressed back, so it just looks like another piece of tube. It's just on the inside there'll be a thread. I have got a sneaky idea for the mount. We'll come to that in another video, but they're not a bad fit. That'll do, that's fine. Right, so they're going to go there. We've got all the schmutz off, so we are pretty much ready to weld this up. Right, loads of people over the time we've been doing it, go on, do a video on how to weld. Well, I ain't doing that. I'm not doing how-tos ever. What I will show you is what I do, and a few little things to look out for and stuff. If you want to learn how to weld, and this, I'm not being funny here, and I'm not trying to be awkward. If you want to learn how to weld, go to college, do a course. You'll have a teacher there that will show you everything. Plus you get to practice and all that other sort of stuff. It's the best way of doing it. I think a welding course, because they do 3 different levels in MIG, TIG and stick. But I think like a welder is like 300 quid or something. It don't cost a hell of a lot, but you get proper tuition instead of just following some loon on YouTube. Well, he's probably doing it wrong in the first place. So anyway, what I want to do first up is I really want to weld that, but I'm not going to weld it until I've welded this bit, which is never going on the bike. Let me explain. Right, so just make sure everything's nice and clean. All I've done, this is just going to be a test piece. What I want to do is to dial the welder in so I get some decent settings that I can weld with that is going to give me a good result. This tube that I'm using on the frame is TRW, so essentially it's got a weld seam down the side of it, 2mm thick, mild steel. So I've just got 2 bits of this. I've coped it just by hand. I mean, it's not a bad fit up, as you can see. There's like worst cases, I don't know, 1/2 mil gap, something like that, but that doesn't really matter. It's all getting welded anyway. Everything's just been cleaned. I've coped this end by hand, and I've just put this bevel on it. So the bevel is just like on the linisher over there. Just hold it at 45 degrees and whiz all the way around. When you're doing it, you know, once your cope is okay, you don't want to take anything off the length. You just want to slope the outside to the inside diameter. Just that way, when you marry it all up, I don't know if you can see, I'll see if I can get a picture, but there is a groove that runs all the way around. So that really helps get the weld in there. The other thing is that the metal obviously thins out as it gets towards the edge. It takes less heat to heat it up. So, you know, you can really pour a hot weld in there. The edge of this tube will be the first bit to go, because obviously it's thinner and it takes less heat. So you'll be pouring the weld in there. You'll get really good penetration on the inside, which hopefully we'll be able to see down there. And you just get the strongest joint that you're possibly going to, really. So a couple of reasons for doing this is, one, I haven't welded this stuff before. It's always nice just to have a quick practice, and get your head in the game again. But it also lets me dial in the welders so I get the right power, the right, you know, wire feed, the right travel speed, all that sort of stuff. So when I have a go on the main frame and put all that lot together, I don't cock it up. Okay, whilst that's cooling off, because it's really hot, I've just cut off a piece of tube, just give it a quick clean up. And I want to get this side bracing bit basically from there to here. I'm going to move it up just a tad because I'm on thicker tube. So it's probably going to go that way, like 5mm, something like that. And I reckon it needs to be about like that. This cope is going to be the awkward one because it's on a curve, but we'll figure that out. Yeah, something like that I would think. So if we get him, turn him on, stick him so he's in line, and we'll just take a reference, so that's our 0. Come on. Right, so that's our 0. And then I just want to know what angle I need to cope it at. So we'll stick him on the bottom there. He's at 90-ish. Wants to be about there, I think. So what's that? 81.5. Right, so if we call it 82, we'll get a cope that matches up there. Then I can mark this one, cope it, and we can stick this in place. I've got a mark on here as to where my top point on this cope's going to be. So I've got a hole saw which is nearly the right size. I've got an 1.5 inch one coming, but I'm just going to give it a go on the mill, and I'll just have to sneak the last little bit in by hand. Right then. Right, so I've got the tube set in with a V-block this side, just so it's central and all that malarkey. I think we are pretty good. You probably do want to come out a little bit. About there. That'll be fine. So we'll reference off this, just so it's 0, stick him on there, and then up this like 8 degrees, about there. Come on, a little bit more, a little bit more. 8.1, that'll do, because I'm going to have to tweak it down by hand anyway. And this is how I was going to do my coping. Like I say, this is what, 2mm too big. It's like a 40mm cutter, so I am going to need to, like the throat of the cope, I am going to need to get in there and just dress it up a little bit, but we should be fine. Right. Right, let's give it a quick clean. I've written on here it's an 8 degree notch, just because that way when I come to do the other one I'll know, and he goes on that way, back like that. That's a nice fit up, and it lands in between my 2 marks. So now I've just got to notch out this bit and get it to fit that tube, which is going to be awkward. Which is going to be very awkward, just because it's on a curve. So, Sharpie. We'll start whittling this down to size and we'll take it from there, I think. So I'm going to chop it off about there. Yeah, I think. And then I'll start sneaking up on it. Alright then, quick clean up. I've put my bevel back on, I'm just cleaning up the hairy bits. Right, decided to move this down a little bit more to the shoulder, because where I just moved it up parallel, it was coming in like in the front of the bend, whereas I really want it on the bend, same as it is the other side really. It is a tiny little bit further forward, but not much. And the bottom of this tube is basically the same as that one over there, so with any luck this will go on like that. That's a good fit. It's good enough. Tiny little gap there, but that was on my coat. That's all nice and snug. Ideal. Right, so that's where that's going. Actually, is this cool yet? Is it cool? Yes. Right. Give him a quick clean and we'll see how we did on the welding. It is just thrown on. I haven't been terribly careful with it, it has to be said, but I'm just looking at heat settings and stuff really. So right, we've got penetration on the inside of this tube. It is literally just curling through, that's all there is to it. It's not a massive blob. It did sink a little bit, so we're going quite hot and heavy, and actually I would probably like to put a bit more filler in there, so we might just ramp the wire feed up a bit. But we've also got penetration on the inside. Where are you? I'll try and do the zoomy thing. But can you, actually the light is terrible. I'll have to try and get a picture. But just by looking down the end, you can see the penetration starting to come through. I think with a bit more wire feed and a slower travel speed, we'll get more of that. However, just looking at it like that, is it a good weld or not? Well, you don't know, do you? Because you can't tell. The only way to tell really if it's a good weld is to chop it up. So that's what I'm going to do. Right, here we go. So if you oh, got a burr on it. We'll look at that side. This is the, well, basically I've just, this was no, like that. So essentially I've got a cut that goes through both the tubes just so we can easily see both sides of the welds. The first thing, I guess, is if you look at that bit there where it's welded, I'll try and get it in the light. There is no joining line. The whole thing has been melted and fused together and everything else. So that's one solid lump. And there isn't like this massive crown of weld that you've also got to dress out. When I come to doing the frame, I'm going to be putting some more weld on it as well, just because I want to have something to dress out. But then you start looking at penetration. So if you look on this side, I can sort of get it in there. You can see the penetration starting to come through, but in other places you can still see a definite line as to where this tube joins this tube. So I haven't got as much penetration on there as I would like. Heat signature's all right, that's not too bad. I haven't cooked it or anything else. And if you look on this one, where are you? So you can see there is penetration coming through, but it's not even all the way around the tube. It's a bit patchy, whereas I'd prefer to see penetration all along the weld line. Again, heat signature's all right, blah blah blah. But on this, we could turn up the heat and we could also turn up the wire feed. You can do things like, you know, you can grind and polish this face down, and then you put acid on it and the weld bead will take on a slightly different colour and you can see the weld and blah blah blah. I ain't got any of that stuff, it's not worth doing in here. But you don't also need to have a shed load of weld pouring out on the inside. As long as you've got penetration, you know it's gone all the way through. Weld sticking out like this on the inside does nothing to add to the strength of the piece. So I think we're going to turn it up a little bit. We're going to have another go, and once I'm happy with it, we are going to set 2 on the frame. A little bit more on the outside would be good, just so I've got something else to dress in, because initially that's going to have a die grinder shoved through it, and then it's going to be dressed out with the end of the finger sander, and then it will be DA'd. So a little bit more meat on there would be good. Some people do like a root pass and then they do like a capping pass. I would rather try and get this sort of welding done all in one, just because then I'm limiting the amount of heat that I'm putting into it. But you know, close but no cigar, I think is the phrase. Something like that anyway. Could do better. So let's turn it up, we'll have another go and move on. Right then, it is a whole new day. You can tell I've got a different kit on. Right, so as far as the welding goes, what I opted to do in the end was go for, basically I cranked it, I did another test piece and I cranked up the heat on it, so turned up the power, but I left the wire feed as it was. The idea was I wanted quite a narrow weld bead, but with an awful lot of heat. Because that seemed to be the best way of getting the penetration I was looking for. All this sort of stuff is done on the vertical, so that's fine. However, when you get to this sort of stuff here, you know, that bit is basically horizontal, then that bit is vertical, and then that bit is overhead. Can't take the frame out of the jig because I want it in the jig when it's welded for obvious reasons. So by by changing the settings to that, I found that I could, and on the test piece I just had it up on a magnet on the bench, so it's the same sort of orientation as this, and just did a test, and it seemed to turn out well. Now what it does mean is that in a couple of places I'm probably going to need to put some more weld in, which is fine, but that is purely for, you know, having enough material there that I can dress it up and make it look really nice. Thing is, I would rather know that the weld is good and strong and it's penetrated all the way through and that there's no gaps and voids or any of that sort of stuff, rather than just doing a bead and it all looks nice and pretty but it's a little bit suspect underneath. So that's the option that I went for. When I was welding as well, I was sort of dotting about, so I'd do a bit over here, then I'd do a bit over there, then I'd do an engine mount, then I'd come over here, I'd go back up there, just to sort of give it chance to cool down a bit between welds. It's amazing the amount of heat that you're putting into stuff, and it can shift on you. So we sort of jumped about all over the place, and once it was all welded I just left. That was it, just let it cool down on its own. No blowing it with an air gun or any of that sort of stuff, and I just left it overnight and I've come in today. So what we're going to do now is have a go at cleaning some of this stuff up, and I'll explain sort of how I'm going to tackle it and what I'm going to use and what I'm trying to do, and then we'll just see how we go. There is going to be an awful lot of welding on this, and most of it isn't really going to be accessible with the bike in the jig. So I'll show you how to do, or what I'm going to do on this one, and then I'm just going to crack on and get the rest of the frame done, so chomp out the other side and all that sort of stuff, and then once everything is welded up and it's all together and it ain't going anywhere, I'll have it out the jig and the whole lot will got just dressed up sort of all at the same time. I think that's going to be the easy way to do. Right, where's my pen? Right, first thing we're going to have a go with is the die grinder. I've got these kits, you get loads of different bits. These things are angry as hell. They really do chomp into material quite quickly. That one I don't think is going to be any good because it comes down to a point, so I won't be using that one. And that one is basically just a cylinder. Won't be using that one. So these are the ones that we'll be using. So I've got one which is basically straight but with a rounded end. I'll try and do it against the white background. Then I've got a ball one which is the same diameter as that one. And I've got this one which is tapered, so this end is the same diameter as this, but it goes down to a point. And they've each got their own uses. So if you are if you're just hogging stuff out and it's like a 90-degree join, that one and this one is quite good. But if it's sort of tapering out to a, you know, a much narrower sort of radius, then obviously this sort of comes into its own. You do have to be careful with these, because if you've got two bits of tube which is coped like that, that's the worst cope ever, and it's obviously the weld bead in there that you're trying to dress up. Can you see that? I'll try and do the zoomy thing. If you were to shove your die grinder straight in like this, it'd be alright to start off with because you only got one point of contact, which is sort of where the die grinder meets the middle of that weld bead. But as you start working your way down, you get more drag on the tool, and there is a chance it's going to start jinking about like this, basically because it catches on one side and the direction of rotation forces it up into the other tube, and then it grips there and then it bangs it back again, and it's like this, and all you end up doing is taking chunks out of stuff you don't want to take chunks out of. So be mindful of it. It's a lot better if you've got a piece of metal, say you had a hole that you wanted to expand. If that fits in the hole quite nicely, you can stick it on one edge and then just go in one direction, so you've always just got one point of contact. It don't wobble about as much, which is just handy. So then the other thing that we'll probably jump in with next is this. Finger sanders. They're dead good for a couple of reasons. Under the belt, this platform basically means that if you push down on the belt, it is solid. So if you want like a hard, you know, sanding back to it, then that's the bit to use. However, there's a gap up here between the roller and that platform. So when the belt is on and in tension, there is a little bit of play in there, so it does conform just a little bit. There's no point really in using the top one, and you're definitely going to use that, so that's really your only option. The other thing is it's like a nice sort of rounded end to it, so you know you can sort of get in here as well, where it's, you know, say it's a bigger radius, say the tube comes in at an angle, something like that, and you've got a weld bead in here and a weld bead in there, because that is going to be a bigger radius to smooth it out to the same effect. You know, you can kind of use this in there and maybe the die grinder in that bit, you know, the tapered one. Either way, it's just a case of, you know, the right one, whatever you're happy using, basically, whatever means you can get in there and get the job done. So that's that one, and then there's these two. So these are both DAs, orbital sanders. Essentially they spin like that, but they also do that in random patterns, and what you end up with is loads of little circle swells and stuff in the work, rather than just like a big sweep of grinding marks like you would get with one of these. And they're quite good just for dressing down and showing your high spots and all that sort of stuff at the end. And they leave like a really good finish for paint and powder coat as well. I tend to use them just to show me highs and lows and that sort of stuff, and where I need to concentrate a bit more effort, because they are quite good at that. You can get like interference pads, which is just like a squishy foam pad thing. There's one. So that would go on that yellow backer, stick on, and then that would go on here. It just means that stuff conforms a little bit more. So if he's doing like a fuel tank or something like that, I would tend to stick one of them on. We ain't going to in this case because it's frame. The other thing is, obviously, if you go with any of this stuff, if you're going up and down the tube like that, you are just going to put a flat in it. But if you go around it like this, then essentially you've got flat area against flat area over a wide area. It just means that you sort of keep the shape. You just have to muck about with it, basically. Just have a go. If you don't want to attack your frame instantly, then, you know, you did a couple of test pieces to get all your stuff dialed in. Practice on that. Shove it in a vise. Okay, so most of this stuff is going to get all dressed up when it's out of the jig and it's on the bench, and I've got, you know, I can turn the frame upside down to get to the bits that I want to, because some of this is just going to be bloody awkward. So we're in, we're chatting, we might as well have a go. So I'll have a crack at sorting out this bit up here, which shouldn't be too bad. And then, just because it's different and this is like a coped join rather than a flat join, we'll have a go at a bit of this as well, just so I can show you what I'm talking about, basically. It isn't a how to, it isn't. This is just the way I'm choosing to do it. You stop beeping. This is just the way I'm choosing to do it with the kit that I've got. If you've got different kit, well, you'll probably have more options and stuff, but this is what I've got. The last two little bits, glasses are not optional. You're shaving off bits of metal and they're coming off this thing really quite hot. Do you really want them going in your eyes? So specs is not optional, in my humble opinion, but you do as you please. And the other thing is just be mindful of where your sparks is going. This is one of the other reasons why I want to do it on the bench, because there's nothing over there that I really care about. It's a fabrication table, there's nothing around it. However, you know, there's a fuel tank over there somewhere. If I had petrol in it, that would be a bit of an issue. Right behind me at the back there are a couple of steel jerry cans, but they have got fuel in, you know, oil, stuff like that. Do you really want to be throwing hot sparks on something like that? If you're working in a garage and there's another bike in the corner that is your pride and joy in your daily and everything else, you start spraying it with hot grinding sparks, it's all going to be peppered and pitted and everything else. You're going to trash the paint job, and it won't take long before it starts rusting either. Just be mindful of where the sparks are going, that's all I'm saying. Right, let's have a go at this then. Right, and there you go. Real time, 15 minutes I suppose, which is probably quite a long time to do it, but yeah, I mean there's no voids in it or anything else, so that's good. I haven't had to put any more weld on. If you feel it, I mean the DA is catching it all over. You do like a single pattern, you can see the scuff marks coming the whole width of the pad, so it's touching down everywhere. There is a little bit of a yump there, so I need to spend a little bit more time on it, but it's just so flaming awkward doing it in the jig. If I could have it on its side on the bench and everything else, then you know it would just be so much easier. So I'm calling that done for the minute, but the whole lot has got to get dressed up properly, but hopefully you see how that happens. Let's have a go at him next. Right, right, that one's proving awkward. I can't get what I want with the grind because this is in the way. Bloody hell. Right, I will get a picture and shove it up just so you can see what I'm doing. And I've still got an awful lot of work to do on this one, but essentially using the die grinder with the ball bit, that just seems the best one for this particular job. Is where I've got the bead of weld running around here. The ball goes right on the crown of it. You just keep working your way down until you're kind of at the bottom of the fillet that you're trying to create, and then you just nibble away, getting wider and wider and wider until you've got like, you know, a fraction of a millimetre left of the bead of weld. And then basically it's in with this jobby and start dressing it down and keep going over it and smoothing it out. And then after a little bit you have a go with that just to show up your highs and lows, and then it's back to this one again. You know, you just keep going. I've been at this, I don't know, 15 minutes I suppose. The trouble is I can't get in where I need to get in because that's in the way, so I'm going to have to do that out of the jig. But this one is going to take a lot longer to do than that one because it's a cope, it's not just a flat. Dressing up stuff like this takes ages. Ages and ages and ages, but you only really get the chance to do it once, so you might as well do it as good as you can, eh? Right, this next bit is the bit that's got me worried. I'm totally honest about it. At the minute the frame is held obviously by the headstock, the swing arm pivot point, because that joins on the back here, this side of that tube and this side of that tube. Well, I'm about to chomp all that up. This is the bit that's got me worried. That's the bit. So if you look at this side of the frame, between those two black lines, that is the only straight bit of frame that I've got. Here I've got essentially a solid piece of steel that's got the swing arm, the side stand sort of boss and mounts for the side stand switch, plus I've got an engine mount, and all that needs to be replicated here basically. So I need to chomp all this out so I can start replacing it at the weekend. What I want to do at the weekend is have this side all chomped out, and I'm probably going to take it down to this point so it's still tied to the jig in 3 places back here and up the front there. I'll get that side tube bent up. I'm also going to measure all this up and then try and come up with a replacement that's based on the new size of tube that I'm using. because I'm going to need to machine that up and turn the ends down and everything else so it fits inside the tube, and have it basically in place for when I do this little bit up to there. But that is going to be interesting. If I can just chomp that bit out, measure the bejesus out of it and come up with an idea, we should be all right. But I need to think about this engine mount as well. And I've only got that much to play with. So side stand position is probably going to shift a bit, I would think. It's probably going to come forwards, I don't know, inch, maybe 30 mil, something like that, which I don't think is going to make a massive amount of difference. And that needs to just be wherever it's going to be. I've got those bosses, so we can sort something out there, but I need to make one of them. So the other reason why I'm pooing myself over doing it, I need to make it exactly the same as the other ones. I can't have them different, it's got to be the same. Right. There's a few people following along actually that have got their own frame builds on the go. What's his name? David Moore. He's the fella that gave us a hand with Brian. He's got his workshop all up and kicking now, because he was in the process of setting all that up when we went and got Brian that day. But it looks like he's got most of his shop set up, and he's actually doing a frame build at the moment. He did send me a picture. I'll stick it up so you can see. It's quite an interesting design. I'm not sure what sort of style of bike or anything else he's doing, but he's doing it all himself, which is dead cool. And he says the hardest bit is all the coping. I know what you mean, mate. That top one in this side brace, because it meets a curve, is just the most stupid shape going. And who's the other fella? Gary Booth. There you go. He's what was it he's doing? He's got he doesn't say what sort of bike it is, but he's got one on the go at the minute, and he's doing loads of welding, and he's got to dress it all up and everything else, and he asked if I could sort of try and cover it. That's sort of what I'm doing. I'm trying to break it down into these little chunks and show different bits of the procedure, because it might help someone, it might. So I'm hoping it did, mate. I mean, let us know if there's something I didn't cover. Well, you know, I've got more to do. And this isn't, you know, that approved way of doing it. You must do it this way, using this thing. And if you haven't got one, go and get one. No, use what you got. I was watching, what's his name, Paul Brody. And he's doing this Aramac build and various other bits and pieces. And where he's coming up to dressing everything, he just files it. Just does it with a file. And he gets beautiful results as well. He's really good, actually. So, you know, there's loads of different ways of skinning a cat. And this is just the way that I'm doing it. But we are going to kind of skip forwards now, because I really want to get on with the other side. So I've got both sides of the frame set, and I can start tying it all together properly. And I also need to sort out my mounts and any extra bracing and gussets and all that sort of stuff. So there's still a truckload to do it. And then once it's all done and dusted, I will be spending probably an entire week just dressing it up and getting it looking nice. As with everything, if we're doing it, then I'll film it and I'll cover it, and you can see what's what. And if I cock it up, then you'll see that as well. But anyway, it's getting on. I need to chip off to my work. And I also need to have a serious think about that insert, because I haven't got a clue what I'm going to do there. But that's it. That's where I'm leaving it. Do hope you're all well and staying safe as always, and we will see you on the next one. Laters!